Okay, everyone. So the next video, having talk about um Wi-Fi. Now we'll talk about switches. And with switch, again, I will stop there. I will go define some words and I will come back before we finally understand what a switch is, right? And we said that based on what we've covered so far when we went through the wireless connection, Wi-Fi, and the modulation and radio waves or carrier signals, we make mention of access point. And if you look at this, that's an access point. Do you see your switch? Do you see devices connected to that switch? I hope this makes sense. And it says that a switch is a network device that connects devices within a local area network. I think we spend so much time talking about LAN, right? Local area network, and uses MAC addresses to forward data to the correct destination, right? So I have just introduced something, MAC address, you know, but what is a MAC address? Let's dive into it. And first, before even going through that, if we see a switch, we said it's an access point. A switch is just like a postal mail guy. When they receive letters, they receive a lot of letters, a lot of packages. But when they have our address or our addresses, they know where on who to deliver such package or emails to. And that's why if you look at this diagram very well, you see that the switch that's the postal mail guy definitely knows who to deliver letters, the recipient. And that's why we have Miss Smith, we have Mr. Jones, and we have Miss Brown. So you know that this letter belongs to Miss Brown because he already knows, got their address, and of course we'll be able to deliver their letters to them. Likewise, that is how a switch works, but we will also discuss in that. As I said, before talking about switches, we make mention of MAC address. If we can revisit the slide, it said that a switch is a network device that connects devices within a local area network and uses using a MAC address. With this basic understanding of what a switch is, let's also understand MAC address. Why do we make the claim that a switch have to use a MAC address? What is a MAC address in the first place? And that's why I say a MAC address known as, I just call Media Access Control MAC. Media Access Control address is a unique identifier assigned to a network interface card. Nick, I just also introduced another term, network interface card. But we said that it's a unique identifier. If you look at it, you look at that number, it's just like your social security number. I don't know, for those of you in Africa, it's just like, I don't know what you have. It's a unique identifier that only you can own that thing. Your laptop has a unique identifier. That's the only thing. This is the only thing that your laptop has that separate your laptop from others machine, and that's what is a unique identifier. For those, some of us in the US, we have that unique identifier that differentiate, identify us, like our social security number. You cannot have, same people, or two people cannot have the same social security number. People can have same last name, same first name, same middle name, same date of birth, but the only thing that's going to differentiate them is the identity, social security number. And that's why we talk of a unique identifier. For example, it says that a MAC address consists of 12 hexadecimal digits, that's 6 pair of numbers and letters separated by colons of dashes, as we see in the example here. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. And again, this is still an example that says that the MAC address acts like a digital fingerprint, right? Remember the unique identifier, like your fingerprint, you want to log into your phone, only you can access it. Somebody put theirs, is gonna, if possible, log them out, right? Ensuring that each device on the network can be individually identified. Remember, we've been talking about wireless connection. We'll be talking about access point. Now you have different devices connecting to each other, but how would a device know who or which device to provide such information? communicating with you all over the internet. How do you even know who I'm sending that information? Maybe on WhatsApp. If I have to send to you, I have to go over the internet. And that's why we are talking about MAC address. All right. So another thing with this, we ask ourselves, but do phones have MAC address? I've touched base so much on maybe laptop and all those things, but what about phones? Absolutely, absolutely. Smartphones and tablet, IoT, Internet of Things, they all have MAC addresses for both their wired internet as well as wired network interface. And you guys realize now it makes sense why we spend time talking about internet as well as Wi-Fi. I hope so, right? For example, say when your phone connects to Wi-Fi at home, it uses its unique Wi-Fi MAC address to communicate with the router. Do you all have router at homes? Absolutely. So your phone will also have a unique Wi-Fi to be able to communicate with that router. But where can you locate it? It doesn't matter which phone you have. If it's an Android phone or an ISO phone or Apple iPhone, then you just go to, for Android, you go to the About phone, your setting, of course, you go to the status and then Wi-Fi. Actually, I visited mine and I was able to see it. I actually have an Android and an iPhone. Likewise, you can go to setting for iPhones, general, about as well as Wi-Fi address. And this simply tells you when you go there, this is an Android, this is an iOS. Likewise, if you go there, this is something that you will see. So make sure you visit, just play around at least to see this stuff for yourself. What of IoT? Tell me about it. Who doesn't know what Internet of Things are? We have Internet of Things devices. Tell me, Alexa's cameras. I have surveillance cameras, ADT. You have literally everything connected. IoT. There's plenty of them, right? My phone, I'm able to connect to my car because through Bluetooth and all those connections that I have robots that have to connect to Wi-Fi to use all those IoT. So do IoT also have, it doesn't matter the size, even if it's that little, do they also have MAC addresses? And that's why we can start talking of thermostats, smart cameras, smart bulbs, smart plugs, right? These are all few examples of IoT. So, but why do phones and IoT have MAC addresses? You might ask, why do they really have MAC addresses? The first one, because of networking. Every device that connects to a network, whether via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or internet, needs a unique identifier to communicate correctly. Without a MAC address, without a unique identifier, you wouldn't know who to communicate, how communication is going to happen. Okay? And security and access control, network administrators can use MAC address to control which devices are allowed to connect to a network using features like MAC address filtering, right? For example, in a home network, a router might allow or block devices based on their MAC addresses. And this is a typical example. Remember, I'm not really going to talk much about router. I just want us to understand this. If you have like the sysadmin, do you see they also have the feature? I'm saying so because for the PCI DSS training, actually provides good screenshot, like configuration setting. I cannot be providing such artifacts or evidence, and then you don't understand like this whole thing, right? Because I'm going to be mentioning about router, I'm going to be mentioning about switch. Maybe you have to get configuration, um, um, a screenshot of the configuration settings. And this is just a typical example where they might go there, in their server, you can enable, do you see enable MAC address filtering? You can allow to determine on the type of MAC address, or you can block if you don't want a certain MAC address within, to connect. But how are MAC addresses used in phone and IoT? First, we talk of Wi-Fi networks. So it says that when a phone or IoT device connects to Wi-Fi, it sends its MAC address to the router. Remember, as I said, router is something that we're going to touch later, okay? The router uses this address to identify and address traffic to that particular device. Bluetooth devices. Nowadays, my smartphone, right? I use my iWatch or my what? Yeah, my watch to be able to connect to my phone. As a matter of fact, this is something rather than you going through your service provider where you'll be paying a plan for this phone, better get it directly from Apple and through Bluetooth you connect to your phone and the same functionality. You don't have to spend money elsewhere, right? If that's something you did not know, now you know, okay? Because myself, I was so tempted to get it through my service provider, but I decided to go with Apple, and that I'm just, I'm not paying any plan for it. So I just connect to my iPhone, through Bluetooth, and everything. I definitely benefit from all the functionalities. Okay. Likewise, Bluetooth enabled devices such as wireless speaker or smartwatches, right? You guys, you have some of those speakers at home. Also use MAC address for pairing communication. Do you see? Before I paired it, there is because of the MAC address that happened. So without the MAC address, no communications is gonna take place. For example, when a phone connects to a Bluetooth speaker, they exchange MAC addresses to ensure they communicate securely. Okay. Then this is a typical example of what we've talked so far. If you see you have the MAC addresses, you want to connect wireless to your router, right? This is a wireless connection. And for that to happen, of course, every communication happens via, the MAC address need to be there because that's a unique identifier. That's the only thing that will know which device is communicating with who. Okay. So this is something that I found the need for us to discuss. But let's look at some of the benefits of MAC addresses. We talk about MAC address randomization in modern devices. We talk of randomize, right? To kind of max things, right? So first, to improve privacy, many modern phones and IoT devices use MAC addresses randomization. This means that the device generates a random MAC address each time it connects to a network or pairs with a Bluetooth device. But why does this matter? It says randomization helps protect users from being tracked based on their MAC address as they move between networks or locations. For example, Wi-Fi scanning phones may use random MAC addresses to prevent tracking by public Wi-Fi networks or even apps, right? Do you see? That makes perfect sense. And this is a concept of randomization when we have to access a public network, then a randomized kind of, max our address. That way we are not exposed and definitely provide better security. How to find the MAC address on IoT devices. First, IoT devices usually have a labeled on them or in the documentation with their MAC addresses, or it can be found in the app used to control a device. As a matter of fact, I have, as I said, I'm going with ADT. So if I go to that app, I believe I can see them, right? For example, the MAC address of the smart thermostats might be found in the app setting or in the device box or labeled. Okay. This is a typical example of a MAC address. Do you see? We have a smart thermostat, so you can see the MAC address, or if you go to the app, you should be able to see the MAC address. Okay? So what is a MAC address? Again, to sum everything up, we've covered a whole lot. We said it's an address. A MAC address is unique identifier assigned to network interfaces for communication on a local area network. But remember, we talk about network interfaces, and bear with you, we will still have to revisit switches since we make the claim of switches using MAC address. And the time we introduce MAC address, we start talking of network interface card. So I felt the need for us to understand some of this words. Then once we go to switch it, to a switch or switches, we should be able to understand the concept better. Okay. And that being said, so we will continue with what is NIC, what is network interface card. I'll see you all in the next video.